Sarah, welcome back.
It's good to be back. It's different today.
Our first ever video newbie questions.
Yeah, I'm not in my pajamas.
Are you nervous?
I am a little bit nervous, actually, yeah. We've been doing newbie questions for, I guess, almost 18 months, maybe a little bit longer. So I kind of felt like very comfortable recording it that way. But now I've got there's like 3 big cameras in my face here and lights everywhere. So
it's been a busy week in the news, maybe not all for good reasons. And the first couple of stories that I want to talk about actually are quite horrific. Rohan Dennis has reportedly been charged by police with causing the death of his wife after she was hit by a car last week. Were you following this story?
Yeah, it's been very sad. I mean, we woke up to that news a couple of mornings ago in utter disbelief that this could happen. Rohan Dennis is such a massive star in cycling as well. Anyone that follows cycling will know him. And his wife is also a star in her own right. She's a track star.
Former world junior champion, not just track star, former world junior champion and world champion in the team pursuit. She's a load of podiums in team time trial world championships as well. Melissa Dennis nee Hoskins. Really sad story.
It's very sad because they have 2 young kids. So this is just awful. It said that basically a man, which is Rohan Dennis, was arrested and charged with causing death by dangerous driving, driving without due care and endangering life. And he's been released on bail until March. And I'm sure all of the kind of proceedings will go forward from there. But
one of the craziest things is, did you see their Instagram post from like 2-3 days before the death of Melissa? And it's a happy Christmas message from our family to yours. It just shows you how fast something can go totally awry.
Totally change. And the kids, their smiles, like it's such a magical time. I would say they're very young. They're definitely kind of Santi age. And they just look so happy and smiling. And yeah, as you said, their life is turned upside down now. So we'll definitely be watching this one with interest. I don't know. It's kind of like the gravel, the murder that happened a couple of months ago, Mo Wilson.
Oh, the Colin Strickland
about a
case.
year ago.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not into following them that much. I know you're like really into following your murder mystery stuff. And then this is like the Venn diagram where murder mystery intersects with cycling. And you're like, okay, I got to follow this.
Yeah, I do and I don't. I think this is a bit too close to home, actually. Even with the Mo Wilson one, it felt a little bit like voyeurism. I think the murder mystery that I listened to, it's in some back end of Texas that no one's ever been to.
Making of a murderer.
Everyone has one tooth and it's like, that kind of shenanigans. So this just feels a little bit closer to home. But yeah, absolutely horrific and very, very sad news. And there was more drama with another very well-known cyclist this week with Mathieu van der Poel getting in trouble again.
Mathieu van der Poel didn't get in trouble. This is the weird thing with this story. I thought it was disgusting. Van der Poel didn't get in any grief for this from what I can see from any of the media outlets. Van der Poel, the fans took a lot of grief for it. The fans were drunk and they were giving Van der Poel abuse and they were booing. And Van der Poel spat at the fans going past for that. It's pretty disgusting. I don't care what the fans are saying. I don't think that justifies spitting at them.
It's an absolutely revolting thing to do, to spit at somebody. I just think that is the lowest of the low. Van der Poel seems to get himself, I think he's got a little bit of a temper. I mean, we all remember what happened in Australia for the Worlds last year. He essentially DNF'd. Or did he show up? I can't remember.
I think he started and climbed off like pretty.
He climbed off early. Yeah, he had been up all night chasing young ones around the hotel corridors because they were making
sure
noise.
That's exactly how it happened, but let's just say that's how it happened.
And basically had spent the entire night, getting himself into trouble, showed up for the Worlds the next day and was absolutely exhausted. So I think he might suffer a little bit from the red mist. He's not as temperate as
he
some
looks
people.
very clean cut.
He does.
That's why I don't think he gets the sort of bad boy press that maybe Sagan got in the last few years.
I think people should have come down a little bit heavier on him. I think to spit at anybody, especially fans, if you're going to be doing racing, you're going to come up from a bit of kind of grief, booing,
especially drunken fans.
Cyclocross. Cyclocross is famous for everybody being really rowdy. So yeah, I think he's definitely kind of gone down a little bit in my estimation.
Before we jump into the questions, did you see any of the Straa Art to finish out 2023?
Oh my God. I just think this is absolutely brilliant. I know you're going to be like, oh my God, people have too much time.
No, I just think they're all fake.
You think they're all
Like
fake?
they're all fake. Like the
What?
one with the lion, it's insane. It's like the Legion head or something, and it clearly has to be done by a drone. I just don't know how any of these
Are real.
are real. Like,
Oh,
how
you
did somebody do them?
skeptic. I'm sure Strava have some way of checking these.
Well, I could just
but it's also just a little
Duct
bit
tape
of,
my garment with a drone and then fly these routes.
I think it's a little bit of fun as well. I mean, I know that the biggest one that they did this year was father and daughter in France. So they broke the Guinness World Records for the biggest Straa Art. And it basically took up a massive portion of France, and they did it in the shape of a heart, and they managed to raise loads of money for a brilliant, brilliant cause. So that was kind of a simple one. I'm sure that was all very legit. There are some really intricate ones, right? There was one in London I had a look at, and it's a giraffe. Did you see that one?
I've seen it, yeah.
It's literally gas. The way they did the tail, they had to go 15 miles out one end to do the tail, and then just a series of left, right, left, right, left, right. It must have been the most tedious, boring.
I know. I'm skeptical of the whole lot.
I think they're absolutely brilliant. I think they're so much fun. There was another one that kind of caught my eye, and that was this huge big heron, and I was like, that's out in the middle of the sea. What's the story with that?
It's a drone.
It's not a drone. Apparently it was a guy on a kayak. So I think chapeau. I think they're absolutely beautiful. Keep going.
Let's
Keep
start
going.
the new year with some questions. What have you got for me this week?
Okay, so question number 1, and this is from @EvanDean. Anthony, would you consider yourself a Huberman husband? You seem to have all of the symptoms. Not that I think that it's a bad thing, but it is all just a bit of faff to add to an already hectic world and days. Should we not be focused on the bigger health and training stuff? Huberman husband.
What's a Huberman husband?
Okay,
I haven't heard this term.
So Huberman Husband is basically somebody who is a disciple of Andrew Huberman. Now, Andrew Huberman, he's a podcast host, but he's not just a podcast host. He's got a lot of kudos. He's actually a neuroscientist at Stanford School of Medicine. And his podcast really is kind of like self-help, but it's very much rooted in science. So he really knows what he's talking about. And he kind of breaks down complicated science jargon to more kind of accessible, bite-sized language for people. I think that's why he got so popular. So he launched his podcast years ago, but it became huge in 2021. So that was kind of smack in the middle of the pandemic when people really, started to have more of a focus on their health. Well, a lot of people did. I actually remember a funny guest that you had a few months ago, Anthony. I think it was Cynthia Thurlow, and she said there's 3 types of people in the pandemic. You either became a hunk, a drunk, or a chunk. So these hunks, everyone who became a hunk, became obsessed with Andrew Huberman. And I do think it's kind of men of a certain age that follow Andrew Huberman, and
So
they
this is
do
someone
everything
who's
that he
into
does.
ice baths, saunas,
Yeah.
intermittent fasting.
Taping your mouth, nose breathing, kind of, cutting down on alcohol.
So what is the question? Would I consider myself a Huberman husband? No. Well, I'm not a huge Andrew Huberman fan. I suppose that's maybe something that you need a precondition to being a Huberman husband to be a Huberman fan.
I don't know. I think
I find stuff a bit boring.
do you really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I think he does a very deep dive into everything. I think if you could,
I'm more of a surface
you're
level.
surface level.
Yeah, I can't do the deep dive
I think
stuff.
what's brilliant about the Huberman stuff is most of these hacks, it's essentially biohacking. That's been around for a good while. But most of the hacks that he kind of promotes, you can do for free. So it's not like he's trying to, I'm sure he has supplements or whatever he's probably, selling or sponsors. But most of the hacks that he promotes are free, and he really gets down into the nitty gritty of
But there's a
why
whole
they're good
band
for
of people where it's Chris Williamson, Huberman, Peter Attia, what's the girl, Ronda Patrick, Dr. Ronda
Yes.
Patrick. There's a bunch of scientists that are all super credible, but they're all on this kick now where they're talking about stuff that athletes have known for decades. Like when I started training from cycling, you very soon realize that about 80% of your training has to be zone 2 riding. And now it's all over YouTube. There's these zone 2 training and the miracle of zone 2 training. It's ask any Cat 4 rider anywhere in the world and they'll tell you they've been doing it for a decade. Same with VO2 max training. They're talking about it now as if these are new discoveries. So why I'm not that into the Huberman Husband type stuff is that it's kind of like Dave Brailsford's quest for marginal gains, which is absolutely brilliant when you have an athlete who's doing the 99% of stuff already, and then they're trying to unearth an extra 1% to get a gain. But what's happening, because people don't like doing hard work, is they're skipping the hard work and they're just doing the 1% stuff. So they're just sleeping in, 8 sleep pods or trying to optimize their evening or morning routines. And they're not doing the basic stuff like moving, sleeping 8 hours a night, calorie restriction or calorie control, and riding your bike, running, lifting weights, whatever you need to do. Like, there's no disagreement in academic circles. You need to do some combination of cardio and strength training. But it's revolutionary all of a sudden because Huberman and a few others are advocating it.
Well, they have a platform and I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think that men are now taking control of their health and their lifestyle. And I don't know, I think it's
It is good,
great,
but you can't short circuit the
trend.
basic reality of any sport to get good at it. You need to put a lot of unglamorous hard work in. And I don't know, I think they paper over that. So, like, if I done a video saying, like, yeah, you want to get good at cycling, ride 20 hours a week, every week for 10 years.
It's not going to blow up. It's not going to be popular.
Okay, hit me question number 2.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, question number 2, and this is from Jamie. Anthony, I heard you talking about block periodization in the Alexander Boo episode of the podcast. I've always structured my training as 3 weeks on and 1 week off, but you both seemed to suggest this is not the smartest approach. What would you suggest instead?
This is a really interesting topic because for a long time, I've had Joe Friel on the podcast a bunch of times, and I came up reading Joe Friel's training Bible as kind of my Bible. It wasn't a training Bible, it was my holy Bible.
There's a copy in there or a couple of copies of each edition. And yeah, I know it's
I love it.
Pride of place.
And he advocates a system of, think about your training, Sarah. So we're trying to plan your training at the moment. If we look at your calendar for the year, 3 weeks on, 1 week off isn't the reality, because we look at it and you go, okay, I'm going to a wedding in May. I'm going away for a week here. I have some family obligations here. I'm getting a medical procedure here. So you start dotting in the periods of time where you're going to be away for a week and off for a week. And then it just doesn't make sense to really do 3 weeks on, 1 week off, because you could have 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and then you're off the next week because you have to travel for work.
Yeah.
So the reality is it ends up being 6 weeks on, 1 week off. And when I say off, I don't mean off. It's like a decompression week. But myself and Alexander Boo, if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that podcast. It's brilliant. It will be coming to YouTube really soon as well. We talk about if you need a full decompression week in your 4th week, you've structured your training badly in your prior 3 weeks, that you've done too much. That if you're looking at a system where to make an adaptation, you're trying to take on as much load as you can over a long period of time, you'd be better off dialing it back 5% for the 3 weeks and then being able to still train in the 4th week. This is kind of a realization that I had, that if I go and I do a 6-hour ride on a Saturday, maybe I can only like ride an hour on a Sunday, or I can't even ride on a Sunday. You'd be better off just doing like a 4 and a 2.
The 3 week block and the 1 week break, though, does kind of, it gives you a little bit of hope, because you're like, okay, I've got 3 weeks of suck, and then I've got, a week where I can actually go out maybe and enjoy the bike and do a few fun rides.
Enjoy every ride.
Oh, God. That's not a thing, is it?
Question
That's
3.
news to me. Okay, question number 3, and this is from Connor. Anthony and Sarah, I joined the virtual time trial yesterday. I saw Connor's name there. It was a disaster. I went out too hard, I guess, and at kilometre 8, I was using every trick in the book to keep my power up.
What are these tricks? I need to know them.
I use these.
Tell me them.
So you change your cadence. So, sorry, Connor goes on to say, i.e. super slow cadence with a high power, then a high cadence, then standing up on the pedals and rocking. I just blew and I DNF'd. My FTP is 245. That was a few months ago, and I've been tipping away over the winter break, but nothing major. Anthony, can you give me a pacing strategy for that 16-kilometre time trial? Also, a mindset strategy to keep going when the going gets tough. We've got a lot of questions in about the time trial since we started it, with people coming on. And what I did notice yesterday, because I usually do the Tuesday time trial, I've documented it actually in a podcast too, is that we'll have a lot of people join, and then we'll have probably about 50% actually go over the DNF, yeah. And about 50% get over the finish line. So my advice, sorry Anthony, you can jump in a second, is to finish it regardless. So even if you've absolutely blown, just keep pedaling until you complete the 16 kilometers. It can only get better the following week when you do that. The one thing that helped me last week was to pace. I just set my gearing on the watt bike, and then I just kept my cadence at the exact same. I didn't even look at the power. I got it to the power I wanted, and then I just kept my cadence at 85. And I was like, right, if I keep my cadence at 85, my power is really going to be the same. Yeah, in the My Whoosh platform, there's a little bit of undulation, but you'll be there or thereabouts with your power. And that for me was kind of good to focus on.
I think Connor's biggest problem is his FTP is 2:45, and that was a few months ago. So he went out with a pacing strategy based off what he could do a few months ago. And people have this like magic maths they do all the time, where you ask them their watts per kilogram and they give you the weight that they hope they could get to and the power that they could hit at their best. So you end up then having a pacing strategy which isn't realistic. And the power meter, it's like clipping into a lie detector. So then you have two worlds colliding, your fictitious world versus the reality. And that never ends well. A nice way to do it, if you currently had a 2:45 FTP, so and again, depending on his interpretation of FTP, is that a power he achieved for 20 minutes or is that something he done for an hour? Let's say he could do that for 20 minutes. His 20-minute power is 2:45. So if his 20-minute power is 2:45, the 16 kilometers, I would break it down into 4-kilometer segments. I would start slow, as in I would start maybe at 2:35 and try and add 5 watts every 4 kilometers onto that. You really want to be considering your life choices pretty hard heading into the last 4 kilometers. If you're still at that point going, this is cruisy, I don't feel much, you probably haven't paced it hard enough. If you're considering your life choices 8K in, you've gone out way too hard. All the fastest times I've seen in time trials, they're negative splits. So you're starting out easier and you're building. It's really difficult to start out at 2:60 and to finish at 2:30 and still have the same type of time. Also, psychologically, there's something about building towards the finish. Last year, I was doing a 16-kilometer time trial every week, and I was in around 400 watts for those 16-kilometer time trials.
You're showing off now.
And I wish. I was getting smashed by the lads I was doing.
My average has been 220 for the 30 minutes.
But that's still solid. It's all about, you can't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 10.
Yeah.
Like, I was racing a friend of mine in Canada, Ed Veal, every week, and I couldn't beat Ed. Ed was averaging 420 on his. Now, we were probably both lying about our weight.
I don't think Ed would lie about his weight. He's a stand-up guy. I can see you doing it all right.
Next question.
But just before we move on, we want some mindset strategy to keep going when the going gets
There's no
tough
mindset strategy. Like, there's no mindset. If you pace it wrong, there's no mindset strategy in there. You can do all the maths you want and try and, read the letters backwards on the shampoo bottle that's on the shelf across from you, and all this distraction maths to try and there is some science in that kind of distraction maths, and there's brain games and brain training you can do to pass the time. But honestly, if you've paced it wrong, you've paced it wrong. You can't trick your body into pulling out a performance that you're not capable of doing.
So what I will say that really helped me get through my time trial, previous one that I did, is I wanted to give up so hard myself at around kilometer 10, and I literally just dig deep and I'm kind of thinking, why am I here? I have big goals for this year. I'm unfit after Christmas. I had a nice break over winter, and why not just man up, just do it, just push through and keep going, because I have more in me, and if I give up now, I'm just selling myself short. And I honestly have that talk with myself probably every 10 seconds during it. So that's my advice to you, Connor.
I also think there's like a bit of standards in it as well. If your standard is you just don't quit.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever quit an effort like that, so it never feels like an option that I can quit the effort. So that's just your standard. You don't quit an effort, and then you do some good efforts, you do some bad efforts, some efforts when you're sick, some when you have a headache, some when you're hungover. You just do the efforts and you just do the reps. And when you zoom out 12 months from now, they add up
That's why I implore you, Connor, don't DNF. Just keep going for the rest of the ride. And I will see you there again on Tuesday. Okay, question number 4. The Rock was on Joe Rogan recently and they talked about training every day. Does the body not need rest days? I've always taken at least a couple of days a week off. That's a brilliant question because they have this like big culture now, isn't it, of like, you know,
No days off.
No days off. Yeah, get it done. Don't be a pussy if you're, taking time off and stuff. I don't know. Is that the right approach, Anthony?
I like the training every day. I had a French director and he used to say ride your bike 7 days a week because your body gets used to having consistent signals that you get on the bike and your body's like, yeah, this is what we do. We cycle every single day. Some easy days, some hard days. A day off, you could put that in inverted commas. I hate people use those quotation marks. A day off could be you ride your bike or you go for a run, but it's a super easy run. It's like 45% of your max heart rate and you're just cruising for a coffee. It doesn't have to feel laborious. It doesn't have to have the association of training with it. The problem I have when I take a day off, and definitely when I take 2 days off back to back, is I feel terrible when I get back into it. I really struggle to get back into the swing of things. And that's from a performance perspective. Like I don't feel good on the bike. I don't feel good on the run. I just feel blocked. But it's also a momentum perspective. Big fan that momentum, it goes in both directions. So when you're training every single day, momentum is with you. You know where your heart rate strap is. You know where your kit is, everything's just, you're coming home from a session, you're putting it into the wash, you're getting going again, you're meal prepping. When you take 1 or 2 days off, the momentum's gone the other direction. And then it takes you like 2 hours and you're walking around the house, smashing things, going, I can't find my leftover shoe. And it's a nightmare trying to get back into it again.
Happens all of the time here.
So I think
Tantrums.
there is something to be said with training 7 days a week, but not 7 hard sessions per week.
Okay, question number 5. Anthony, I saw your tweet about how there will be loads of new people out running, cycling and in the gym this January, and instead of judging them, to encourage them. That's me. I'm that new person on the bike path, and I'm not sure if I'm actually being judged, but I feel like I am. I definitely don't have an athlete's body. I would be considered obese, and I can feel eyes burning into me when I'm out training. I guess I just kind of feel vulnerable and exposed out there. It almost feels like being back in the schoolyard. Any tips for dealing with this and tips for getting through the next year and staying focused?
I think it might feel like people are looking at you and judging you, but they definitely aren't. Everyone is so wrapped up in their own shit. And this is something I actually never had to learn so much in cycling. I was self-conscious at the start in cycling. When I started wearing Lycra kit going out training, nobody cycled. You go out now and everybody's on the bike path. There's people down the local bike shop, the coffee shop wearing cycling kit. When I started like 10, 15 years ago, I didn't know another single person that rode a bike. So all my friends were football players. So I used to put football shorts over my cycling leggings and then like take off the cycling shorts when I got out the countryside where I knew no one had seen me. So I was like, had this personal shame going on. But really since then, I've never felt like an outsider on the bike. I've always felt like I'm inside that kind of cycling clique because it is a little bit of a clique. But I've definitely felt like an outsider in the gym because you can go down to the gym, you can have these, 200 kilo dudes who can bench press, half of the state of Texas probably.
They're definitely not looking at you. They're looking at themselves.
Yeah, no one cares. It takes you a while to realise this. That people are so wrapped up in their own lives and their own goals and in their own insecurities and vulnerabilities that they just don't care about you.
I agree. I think it's actually the opposite. I think people look at, let's say this guy who writes in, they look at him, he's out there and he's trying to change himself, he's out exercising. And I honestly think when I see somebody like that, and I think most people do, they're like, well done, like getting after it. Like I think that you are amazing for putting yourself out there. I do see the vulnerability part, particularly cycling when you're getting into Lycra. When we first started going out, we went on our first cycle together down in Kinsale. You handed me Lycra shorts and a Lycra jersey painted onto me. I was like, what kind of a pervert is this fella? Bringing me out in public like this. And yeah, you do feel very exposed. I completely get that, but I agree with your point, Anthony. I don't think anyone is judging you. If anything, they're egging you on. They're giving you 10 out of 10.
Kit is horrible for beginners though.
It is.
Kit is, I don't know, we don't have a name on this question. I don't know if this is a male or female question, but really maybe it's extra exposed for a female, but regardless, the body paint kit is not essential. Like, you don't need to look like every other cyclist to be a cyclist. But it's amazing how outside the clique you will feel, which I actually don't think is a bad thing for when you're getting started, when you don't wear the cycling kit. Like, I rode like 2-3 months ago up our local climb, and I was just wearing like a pair of bib shorts, but I had like a dress short over it, no helmet, and a pair of sunglasses.
You're going gravel riding, I think.
But yeah,
you're going up the hill.
I can't remember why I was dressed like that, but nobody waved at me. Like, I was still doing intervals at like 380 watts up the hill, but nobody waved at me. It was like I was outside of this little cult. But I actually don't think that's a bad thing for when you're getting started, that you're in your own little world and you're in your own little cult. So dress how you feel comfortable and don't feel that need to fit in with everyone else and, you know, wear the cycling uniform, because look, it's not flattering on even the most athletic figures.
Yeah, it's difficult enough to pull off. I mean, if you do want to wear it, because it is quite comfortable, it's specifically made for cycling, so you don't get chafing and all of that, you know, saddle sores, good stuff like that. If you do want to wear it, just own it. You're gorgeous. You're gorgeous in your Lycra.
Sarah, to wrap up, I've been given what's now getting quite popular as a little My Whoosh session of the week. And this is a session I actually done today, just before we started this, so I can attest to how difficult this is. It's, if you go into My Whoosh and you go into workouts, it's an anaerobic number 1, it's called. And it's essentially 4 sets of 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And the on is at VO2 max power. It is a rough session. It's a TSS 59 with an intensity factor of 0.82. So it's a lot of bang for the buck. If you don't know what any of that stuff means, it just means inside 58 minutes, you're working pretty damn hard for the 58 minutes. Jump over there. I'd highly encourage you to check that one out. And Sarah, it'll be going into your training plan.
Oh, can't wait. Look forward to it.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll be back again for another Rohan podcast real soon. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to today's interview. If you like this interview, I'm going to put another interview up here, which I know you're really going to enjoy. And please